Hi, I'm Rudy Giuliani, and this is another episode of Rudy's Common Sense. And this episode is a truly significant one because it is now quite obvious that we are in the middle of what is going to be maybe the most important historical election contest that we've ever had. I mean, it will rank with the ones in the past, Hamilton, Jefferson, Burr, and others that have gone to the House of Representatives. And this has all the makings of it, and it's there because for all the censorship, for all the lying, for all the cover-ups of the three conspirators to this attempt to steal this election, the three conspirators are the Democrat Party, big tech, and big media. The facts are coming out, ladies and gentlemen. The facts are coming out. And the facts are not one isolated single act of fraud, not one state in which a problem has been found in computation. That was Bush v. Gore, wasn't it? Problem in computation. Remember the Chads? Couldn't figure out who was winning. Okay, that's tough. That was tough. One state, accounting problem. This is not one state. This is not an accounting problem. As we have been investigating this, it very, very quickly emerged, not only from the people that we found, but from the people who have come forward, from the American patriots that have come forward, the brave people willing to take on threats of harassment, threats of losing their job, threats on their children, and in even some cases, threats to their lives. I mean, this is a very bad time we're living in because there's a kind of evil in our land right now. It's been there for quite some time, and I'll define it for you at the end. But this shouldn't be. This shouldn't be. This is a legitimate, very legitimate challenge to an election where there is substantial evidence, of which I'm going to impart maybe 20% to you right now, of fraud. Fraud in our land. Fraud in many places in our land. I have concentrated, obviously, on the states that could change the result of the election because I'm representing a client who I believe, and I know I probably will get shut off social media for the rest of my life and maybe even put in a jail cell somewhere if Zuckerberg and the other kings of the media and kings of the tech world. But I believe, from what I've seen and the professional experience that I have in investigating crimes for many, many years and the success that I've had in uncovering them, I believe that we have here a very, very dangerous and a very systemic problem of voter fraud, such that the honest votes, if we could isolate those, would elect Donald J. Trump as the next president, and in most states by a fairly substantial margin. And I'm going to concentrate on what I call now the overview. We've given you a lot of the facts. I held a press conference to give a lot of the facts, and we will have future episodes in which we will, as they say, drill down into these facts. We'll show you the affidavits that I can show you. We'll show you the charts that I can show you, and we'll show you the statistical reports that corroborate the direct evidence. But what I want to do now is step back a bit. I want you to exercise logic. Remember, this is called common sense. So I want you to exercise your common sense. There's a great lawyer who influenced me when I was younger to become a lawyer, Louis Nizer. And he wrote a great best-selling book called My Life in Court. And it gave me a hint on cross-examination that helped me enormously in my days in the courtroom. And I was kind of pretty good at cross-examination. He said, not always, but usually, the most common sense result, the most logical result, is actually what happened. And if somebody is testifying to an illogical result, a result that doesn't really make sense. You're going to be able to illustrate to the jury the flaws in that. You got to be careful because that's true 9 out of 10 times. It isn't always true. But it does give you the sense of the power of circumstantial evidence. Or I'll give you another quote from Stephen Bannon. Stephen Bannon says, "There are no conspiracies, but there also are no coincidences." Which means when you see coincidences, as an investigator, they've got to be investigated darn hard. So let's start with the biggest one of all, okay? Let's start with the fact that somewhere around 11, 12 on November 3rd, 1, 2 on November 4th, Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, as far as I remember, was leading in every state that was then ultimately taken from him. Okay, let's review that in a second, okay? He was leading in Pennsylvania, and I'm going to give you the rough numbers. You can go back and check. I may be off a little here or there. He was leading in Pennsylvania by about 700,000, 800,000 votes. And there was about 65% of the vote cast, if my recollection serves correctly. That's very, very hard to come back from. In prior years, with a fair and unbiased calling of states, Pennsylvania should have been called for him. States in which Biden had far less of a lead and a lot more to go will call for Biden, like Arizona, which was called for him almost before the polls closed and turned out to be, I think, a state that Trump won. But if you want to look at the numbers now, it's a state that Biden won like that. Then we go to Michigan. He was ahead by 300,000 votes in Michigan. He was ahead by 8 to 10 points in Wisconsin. And there they were also at about 65, 70% of the vote cast. Nevada really hadn't meaningfully reported yet, so we'll take them out of it for now. He was ahead in Georgia and North Carolina by 2.5 points, but they were in the 85 to 90% of the vote cast by that time. I recall being awarded the mayor's race when I ran the second time, and I was ahead by exactly that, 2.5% with 87% of the vote cast. That's a call that usually goes for you. He was ahead in North Carolina by the same margin, and they wouldn't call that. And then he was ahead in Virginia, and I don't remember the exact numbers in Virginia, but they wouldn't call that either for him. In fact, I think they had already called that, even though he was ahead much earlier, for Biden. Now, what are the odds that he fell behind in every one of those states? Not just 5, not just 3 of 5, not just 2 of 5, not just every single one. I don't know. That one strained credulity a bit. That one seemed a little funny, a little strange. They made up 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania. They made up 300,000 votes in Michigan. They made up 9% with, like 80% already in Wisconsin. And in Georgia, up by 2.5 to 3%, entering into like the 90% category of votes cast. And all of a sudden, it takes us 4 more days to count the remaining votes. Somehow he just narrowly loses. Same with Arizona and Virginia. And what were the ballots they were counting that overcame this? The ballots they were counting are the most insecure, most prone to fraud type of voting invented ever. Those are not the words of a mere mortal like me. Those are the words of former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker in a bipartisan report they did on the dangers of different types of voting. And they listed mail voting as by far the type of voting that could be most prone to fraud. And boy, were they proven to be prophets. And so was Justice Souter, who made very much the same point. Because what happened is the following. What happened is, in every one of the states that I mentioned, and now let's drill down a little deeper, not just the states, they picked a city or cities in each of these states to perpetrate their massive fraud. They didn't do it all over Pennsylvania. They did it in the places in Pennsylvania they own. The Democrat Party owns Philadelphia for 60 years. Sometime take a look at the number of convictions of people in Philadelphia in public office for political corruption. Go take a look at the number of people convicted for voter fraud in Philadelphia. It is astounding. It's astounding. And if the state was crooked in the past, the state is now even more crooked. The state has a district attorney who doesn't prosecute criminals, who was put there by George Soros's millions and millions of dollars, and the crime rate is going through the roof. Right through the roof. Right near the top for murder, right near the top for property crime, because they have a left-wing radical DA who lets criminals go free. This would be a good opportunity to take a short break. I couldn't believe we were evicted from our home that we didn't even sell. Those are the words of a homeowner, Deborah, when she learned she was the victim of home title fraud. It's a devastating crime that can cost you your home. And title fraud is not covered by insurance or common identity theft services. The only folks to trust that I know of to protect your home's title is Home Title Lock. Cyber thieves have discovered the titles to our homes are kept online. They forge your name on your deed stating you sold your home, and they refile as the new owner. In Deborah's case, she didn't even know she was a victim until the eviction notice arrived in her mail. Home Title Lock protects you and your home by putting a virtual barrier around your home's title. The instant they detect tampering, they mobilize to shut it down. Go online to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim and don't know it. Then use code RUDY, that's me, and sign up for 30 free days of protection. That's code RUDY at HometitleLock.com. Thank you for coming back. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, the way I look at it, Philly is professional in voter fraud, like Chicago. They're professionals. Pittsburgh's amateur. They don't steal as much. And you're going to see to the numbers. Basically, Philly part of the state did 2/3 of the thefts. What do the thefts entail? And I'm going to do it once because it pertains to all of them. Locking out Republican inspectors so that none of the mail ballots, the ballots that are prone to fraud, the ballots that Carter and Baker warned us against, the ballots that Souter warned us against, not a single Republican got to see any one of those ballots, even though it is a time-honored tradition and the law in every state until several days ago that they have to be inspected. And if they are not inspected, they are thrown out. Even though that's the law in every state, Republicans were pushed aside, knocked aside, put in corrals, hit, harassed, and threatened. And threatened with arrest by sheriffs who sold their soul to the Democrat political machine. Why do they pick Philadelphia? Because they can get away with anything they want to do in Philadelphia. Why do they pick Philadelphia? Because they can go find a hack judge that will say anything, do anything, and make the most ridiculous opinions. Same thing in Pittsburgh, just on a lesser scale. How many votes did they steal in Pennsylvania? Upwards of 680,000 votes. That flips the election right around. And there are many other things they did there. Michigan, they did the same thing in Michigan. Corralled Republican inspectors, pushed them around, pushed them out, made sure they were all gone when the delivery of 100,000 votes came in. in trucks in the middle of the night, in garbage pails and in trash cans and in buckets. Little did they know there was an employee of Dominion hanging around and 2 Republicans who remained behind and kind of hid around. So therefore, they have given affidavits, which is direct evidence. We have direct evidence of this, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to trust me. You go look at the affidavits. Got direct evidence of it. Of this 100,000 votes, all for Biden. The envelopes had nothing on them, thrown away. We also have direct evidence of every single Republican inspector pushed out. And we go to Wisconsin. Got the same thing. Republican pushed out. Ballots are examined. Ballots are examined privately, secretly. I mean, they might as well gone into a back room with cigars and just wrote the ballots while they were there. Maybe they did. How would we know? We were shut out. We go to Nevada. You don't think the same thing happened in Nevada? Exactly the same. Same allegations. Little different wrinkle on the law in Wisconsin and Nevada. Actually, better cases because the law there is stricter on absentee ballots than it is in, let's say, Pennsylvania. Georgia, again, Republicans uniformly shut out of the polling places, not the polling places, the counting places, of which are only 1 or 2, in Atlanta, Democrat City for many, many years, Democrat City with a history of corruption, mayors going to jail, and finally, Phoenix, Arizona. Same situation. In each one of these, without giving you the parts of the case I've given you part of in the past, and I will in the future, in each one of these cases, there are at least 4 or 5 times more invalid ballots than there are any kind of votes separating them. But I ask you to separate yourself now from the little picture, go to the big picture. How logical is it that overnight he's going to turn every single one of these states? And how logical is it that they all of them came to the conclusion that they should do the same thing? Like the guy in Philadelphia, and the guy in Pittsburgh, and the guy in Detroit, and the woman in Wisconsin, and the woman in Las Vegas, and the woman in Atlanta, Georgia, and the woman in... They all decided to put Republicans in corrals? Like they're horses or sheep? I mean, we should go look and see who had the corral contract for the Democrat Party. Like one single idea carried out in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 states, also done in New Mexico and Virginia. Has to have been a plan of Biden and the Democrat committee. They're going to say they wouldn't cheat? I don't know. A guy who cheats in law school could cheat in the presidential election? What do you think? Guy who takes millions for his family from communist China could cheat in the presidential election? We're not talking about a man with a character for honesty. Far from it. Far, far from it. We've got a little more to cover, and I think you're going to find it very interesting, so come right back. If you want a good cigar, go to a good cigar shop. You want the best, go to Famous Smoke Shop. Let Famous Smoke deliver your favorite cigars right to your doorstep at America's lowest prices. Famous opened in 1939 as a small shop in New York City. Today, it's the largest privately held American-owned cigar business in the country. That's 80 years experience in the cigar business, and they're putting that experience to work for you, making deals on the cigars you love, from affordable, everyday smokes to high-end luxury cigars for your next special occasion. Go to famous-smoke.com/Rudy and click the Activate button to apply the promo code. Pick from more than 1,000 cigar brands, fresh and ready to ship from Famous Smoke's climate-controlled 24,000 square foot humidor. Check out with the promo code RUDY20. That's Rudy, R-U-D-Y, 20, and get $20 off your order. Every cigar purchase you make is backed by the Famous Freshness Guarantee. Get real cigars from a real cigar shop, shipped direct to you from Famous Smoke Shop. Go to famous-smoke.com/Rudy. That's famous-smoke.com/Rudy. Thank you very much for coming back. Now, what are the other logical things to tell you this happened? In the city of Pittsburgh, pick just one now, city of Pittsburgh, there are 17,000 so far provisional ballots. Let me tell you what a provisional ballot is. A provisional ballot is a ballot where mostly, not always, you walk in and you say, I'm Rudy Giuliani, I'm here to vote. Mr. Giuliani, you've already voted. I said, you remember the absentee ballot? You sent it back. No, it's at home. I never sent the absentee ballot back. I always intended to vote. I never sent it back. I'm sorry, Mr. Giuliani. You're right here. It's checked off. You voted. No, I didn't do that. So rather than have a big fight over it, you get to cast a provisional ballot, which almost never counted. Because they never resolve it, never have the time to resolve it. Okay, if that happened 1,000 times or 1,500 times, you'd say, maybe some people forget. How could 17,000 people in Pittsburgh forget that they cast an absentee ballot? I don't have the numbers yet for the other places. They're higher. It's true in every one of these places. 20,000 in Philadelphia, and 10,000 in another place, and 12,000 in another. I mean, not everybody forgets like Biden, 17,000 people in Pittsburgh went to the polls and were told they had already voted and didn't remember it. Or is the more consistent explanation, as a witness in Detroit swore under oath that when they didn't have a person that was registered, or when the person voted for the second or third time, they just assigned it to anybody they had to very quickly. And therefore, there were a lot of these people whose identities had been used to cover the illegal voters, maybe an illegal alien, maybe a person voting for the third time, maybe a person from out of state. So they voted in place of you. And when you went in, you were told you had voted already. And that 17,000, by the way, is growing. And as we go through these cases, and every single one of them, we're going to have a very, very large number of those ballots, of those provisional ballots. And then let me give you one last one for you to think about and understand as we go through this process, which is laborious and is going to take some time, but it is sure necessary to save our democracy. And that is what we call overvote. This is probably the most telling of all. Now, focus on one city where I have a complete and thorough report. I have much sketchier reports for other cities. By next week, I'll have them all. In the city of Detroit, about 2/3 of the precincts in the city, their vote doesn't compute, which is why the two Republicans didn't vote to certify. And technically and correctly, it hasn't been certified. I think it was like 79%. The vote doesn't compute. And what that mostly means is more people voted than people who are registered in the district. So let's say there are 5,000 people registered in a district. How could 8,000 people vote in that district? And wouldn't those 3,000 additional votes be illegal? Of course they are. And why does it happen? Now, let me tell you what the numbers are. They're actually worse than that. The numbers range from about 125% to 350%. What that means simply is that 3.5 times more voters voted than are registered in the district. The reason that happens is all through the pre-voting process, they were constantly assigning phony votes, false votes, like those 100,000 ballots that came in for Biden. You think they were real? Those ballots were they were shot off with the help of machines, and many of them didn't even have anything on the outer envelope, which would make them purely illegal. But then those had to be squared up for some precinct somewhere. These people didn't live in that precinct. They might even exist. So that's why you have 3 times more people voting than are registered in the precinct. In Detroit, we have a fair number of precincts in which 2 or 3 times more people voted than live in the precinct, even the children. That would allow you, or any sensible, honest person, to draw the conclusion that somebody was doing massive cheating. How do you get 3 times more votes than people who are registered? That's the case in Detroit. Studied. Witnesses ready to go on the witness stand to prove it. That's the case in Philadelphia. That's the case in Pittsburgh. That's the case in every one of the cities that I mentioned to you, which I would call Democrat corrupt cities, because they intelligently selected places they own, where they own the sheriff, not the police, the sheriff, who's usually very political. They own the courts. They own the election board completely. I mean, they owe their jobs to the party boss. And this didn't happen in neutral places. This didn't happen in rural places. This didn't happen even in suburban places. This didn't happen where it's 50-50 Republican, Democrat, or even 60-40. This happened where it's 75-25, 80-20. If, in fact, the state of New York or the state of Massachusetts or the state of Maryland were up for competitive races, it sure would have gone on in my city. So don't feel like I'm picking on your city. I know about corruption in my city. My first race, I was told I had to win by 50,000 to overcome the Democrat cheating. I was told that by a member of the Liberal Party, not a Republican. And I lost by 30,000. The second time, I put $1 million into voter integrity and won. So I know about vote fraud. I know it. I know the techniques, and they used every single one here. And they all got magnified because of the mail-in votes, which were absolutely taken advantage of in a conspiracy of tremendous, tremendous outreach. And I haven't gotten at all to the whole situation of Dominion and how the votes were counted in 27 different states by a machine built by a company that began and continues to be a company that specializes in voter fraud. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. A company that specializes in voter fraud. We will discuss that probably in the next episode or the one after in great detail. But I'll give you a little bit of a foretaste of it. The company that counted the ballots in Michigan and most of those states is a company called Dominion. It's a Canadian company. Why are we using a Canadian company to count American votes? Why are we sending American votes out of the United States? But they don't go to Canada. They go to Germany. Now, why do they go to Germany? Because Dominion doesn't count the votes. A company called Smartmatic counts the votes. The company was founded in the early 2000s by 2 Venezuelans extremely close to Chavez, the dictator of Venezuela. They continue to own the company to this day. They were founded for the specific purpose of fixing elections in Venezuela. They fixed elections in Venezuela. They fixed elections in Argentina. What I am saying to you, go Google it. The press is too lazy or too warped or too crooked. Go Google it. It's there. There's a letter from Democrat Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney in 2008 telling you what I just told you. The company is founded by communists who wanted to make sure Chavez and then Maduro were elected regardless of the will of the people. It's a company that has been kicked out of the United States. even kicked out of Chicago. And how did it get back in? It got back in as a subcontractor to Dominion. And Dominion never disclosed, I imagine, Smartmatic. Or if they did, these governors, like the governor of Michigan, hired them to count American votes. We have a Venezuelan company with Venezuelan voter fraud technology counting our vote. And as we are studying the irregularities in the vote, it's becoming quite clear. It's becoming again. Been talking too much today. It's becoming quite clear that they interfered with the vote, but that's a matter for another day. So let's conclude on this note. If you just analyze this from the point of view of common sense, it makes common sense that this election was stolen. Trump was ahead in every one of these major states by large margins, particularly in light of the vote that lied ahead, the number of votes that lied ahead, particularly in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. In every one of them, they were able to they didn't miss one. Every one of them, they were able to overcome it. Every one. And we're talking about probabilities now. And they had 7,000 or 8,000 or 9,000 people coming in, not knowing they had voted, being told they had voted, and saying they didn't, because those were the patsies that we used to assign the false ballots. I got a case here. I think like a prosecutor, I got a case here. But there's a lot more than a case here. There's our democracy at stake. What is America if we don't have a free and fair right to vote? Not a democracy anymore. These recent Democrats are moving very, very fast towards socialism. And socialism always breeds authoritarianism. You can see it in the dictates that they're giving, almost the way in which they're enjoying telling you can't have Thanksgiving. And if you don't wear a mask, they're going to line you up in the firing squad. Treating a mask violation one way, and the district attorney of Philadelphia lets a robber go free. But a mask guy, oh boy. There's always the emergence of a dictatorial attitude and spirit in a communist society, in a socialist society. That's a Freudian slip, huh? But we're getting there. We're moving toward communism. And the first thing they do is undermine the right to vote. I'm going to leave you with a thought. A company that participated in the undermining of the vote, Smartmatic, which is a Venezuelan company, built to cheat for Chavez and Maduro. The chairman of the board was a close friend and business partner. His name is Lord Malik Brown. Very, very distinguished name. Lord Malik Brown. And he is a very close business partner. And he is involved as the number 2 person in George Soros's biggest organization. George Soros, the biggest contributor to the Democratic Party, the biggest contributor to Black Lives Matter, and the biggest contributor to Antifa. Too many coincidences here, ladies and gentlemen. Too many. What I'm telling you is exceedingly dangerous to the survival of our democracy. Democrats over the last 4 years have trashed our Constitution so badly, and because the press just covers up what they do, they're destroying our rights. We got to make a stand here. I don't care how much they intimidate us. I don't care how much they threaten us. I don't care if they say we can't get jobs and we're going to lose our reputation. And this is about our country, ladies and gentlemen. It's about the survival of the greatest democracy on earth. What they've done to it is outrageous. These people are criminals, and they are worse than a lot of the criminals I've prosecuted before, and they are a lot worse than the common criminals that we put in jail or we let out of jail. These people are trying to take away from us rights that were given to us by God. We're not going to let them do it. We're going to fight, and we're going to fight again, and we're going to continue to fight because we have ultimate faith that a much higher authority is looking over this country. It's guided it forever, and we have great faith that we're not going to have our sacred right to vote taken away from us, because that's what's at stake here. So stay tuned, because this battle has just begun, and we are going to prevail. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America.